Hey everyone, thanks for stopping in to see how I introduce suffixes. So today we're going to talk about not only how I introduce suffixes, but what a suffix is and what the word suffix actually means. So the word suffix has a chameleon prefix, also known as assimilated prefixes. So this prefix, this assimilated prefix, comes from the family sub. So sub meaning under and fix meaning to attach. Later on we're going to talk about sub as the assimilated prefix in my assimilated prefix video, where we talk about sub meaning above. But in this case it means under, or sometimes I might tell my kids behind or below. So if in this case it would be something that attaches behind the word, as opposed to a prefix which actually attaches before the word. So what exactly is a suffix? A suffix is a morpheme, a group of letters or a single letter added to the end of the stem, often changing the word case. So I use the word stem because there's a lot of confusion between root, base word, root word. I find it all confusing, and there doesn't seem to be an agreement on what those definitions actually mean. So we're going to use stem because the stem is the part of the word where we add the affixes to. So suffixes versus word endings. We have a lot of things that we call suffixes that may not be suffixes at all. One of the big argument ones that I get in with people is shun, and I teach it like I teach suffixes. However, I mention that it's not a suffix, and the reason that I do tion, cian, sion in together as a group like that is because I think it's easy to say it. It's easy to speak those sounds. If we think of speech to print, meaning that we have sounds before we have words, in the sense of we have sounds that we speak words, and we have the letters that write the words. So if I'm saying shun to a student, they have to understand how they're going to write that. So this is why I teach it this way, and I know that everyone wants to call ion the true suffix. Whether it is or not, I think there's still, there's still the connective I conversation, but to me the TI say sh and the ON says un, so that's where I'm going to leave it. And for the case of teaching it, for me it works out a lot better that way. So what other ones aren't true suffixes? Maybe words like captain, where the AIN is saying in, or the erd in standard, or maybe the EL in shovel. They're endings, but they're not actually true suffixes. So we've got two types of suffixes. We have derivational suffixes and inflectional suffixes. We've got derivational prefixes, but we do not have any inflectional prefixes. So let's talk about what that actually means. So what is derivation? So if something is a derivative of something, it's formed a new word, or a new word from a stem by the addition of an affix. So derivational suffixes are, they change the meaning of the word. They are parts of speech which controls the semantics of your sentence, and there's approximately 80 derivational suffixes. So we take a word like hope, we change it to hopeful, teach, teacher. And some more examples of derivation would be, just with the single use of the word class, we can take that stem and we can make all sorts of words with all sorts of different word cases. So we have class, which we could consider a noun. When we add IC, it becomes an adjective. ICAL, it becomes another adjective. If we add ly onto that, now we've got an adverb. If we have IC plus IST, we have a noun because we know that IST is a person. And when we add IZE, it becomes a verb. So you can see how just taking one stem, just by adding suffixes to it, we can change them into a lot of different words. All right, so now we're talking about inflection. So what is inflection? So a good definition that I found was this. So the change that words undergo to mark the distinctions such as case, gender, number, tense, person, mood, or voice by adding a suffix. So what are those inflectional suffixes? So the inflectional suffixes there are only 8 of them. We use them for syntax, and they don't change the meaning of the word. So for perhaps like a dog, that's still a dog, it's just that we have more than one dog. If we walk, walking is still walking, but it's a past tense of walking. So every day I walk to school, yesterday I walked to school. So the 8 inflectional suffixes fall into these guys. So you can see here it's the S as in third person singular present. We could do it as a plural. We could do it as a possessive. We have the ED as a past tense. ING, EN, ER, and EST. Those are the only inflectional suffixes that we have. I have them listed here so you can see how they change the syntax, but they're not actually changing the meaning of the word. Alrighty, so do suffixes affect the stress of a word? So by the stress I mean the syllable accents. Do the accents change? Some suffixes don't change the stress at all. Some move the stress into the syllable before the suffix, and some suffixes take the stress onto themselves. So let's look at all of those guys. So examples of suffixes that don't change the stress would be full, ish, ism, ist, if, is, less, and meant. So we might have words like colorful, yellowish, effortless, amusement. I think you're hearing that the stress doesn't change at all. And just a little reminder about stress. It's a pretty good chance that your dyslexic student isn't hearing the stress either. Syllable stress is one of those things that the scientists know for sure that the students have a deficit of. So some, I suppose, like others, things with dyslexia. Oh, sorry about the airplane. We've got different cases, different levels of it inside of dyslexia of itself. So some students may not hear it at all. Some may understand a little bit of what you're talking about. In the case of me, I don't hear them at all. I know that the word changes how it's sounding, but I can't tell you which syllable is accented. In fact, I'm going to add that for me, the accented syllable almost always sounds like the syllable with the schwa sound in it, and we know that those are never accented syllables. But because I'm hearing the sound, it feels like it's louder and stronger to me. So if you're interested or curious about that, I've got a blog post on that. I also have some follow-up articles which are really interesting about music and dyslexic kids with music and timing, because stress is about timing. So I would look into that. For me, it's really important that you understand that your students aren't going to really hear the stress. I know a lot of people teach to the stress, but all the studies that I've learned, from all the studies that I've read rather, I've learned that actually teaching them to hear the stress is probably not a likely thing to happen. However, you can teach them the patterns in which the stress is going to happen. So we might know that if we teach them these suffixes in this particular way, that we're going to know that that's what happens to the stress in that particular word. So that's those guys, so that they do change the stress. There's a thing called the third syllable rule. Otto Jesperson speaks about it a lot. So when the stress is on the third or fourth syllable from the end of the word, the first syllable, or sorry, the first vowel will be short. So let's read that again when I don't screw up. So when the stress is on the third or fourth syllable from the end of the word, the first vowel will be short. Make sense? So here's a really good example of an original word that's following this pattern. So that was holiday, that word on top there. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it how it may have been pronounced in early English. The two words would be holy and day, and you can see when they're combined it becomes holiday, and the stress changes, the vowel becomes short. So now we've got accent shifts in stems. So we can see that we go legal to legality, penal to penalty, creed to credulous, sate to satisfy, sacred to sacrilege, explain to explanatory. It also happens in sentences. So notice what happens to courage when we add, and alcohol when we add the suffix. So I'll read the first sentences, you can read the other ones to yourself. It takes courage to seek help for an alcoholic problem. It's courageous to seek help if you're alcoholic. And you can hear there how the syllable changes. You also probably can hear how when I, as a dyslexic person, a person who's been teaching dyslexic kids for almost 20 years now, still stumbles when I read out loud. Imagine how our kids feel. All right, so vowel-vowel division is going to be an exception to that rule that we just talked about. So lion with ESS at the end still remains lioness. And same thing happens with the rest of these. The vowel doesn't change to being short. All right, so we've got random suffix patterns that are pretty true. I think is often a really tricky syllable division pattern. People often ask, why panic? Like, why is that a short A? Why isn't the N doubled? Most of the time the reason is that these words, except for traffic and a couple other ones, the consonant in the middle is going to be single, and the vowel before it is going to be short, mostly because they're roots. Almost all the time they're roots. And then we're adding that suffix ic to it. And here I'm talking about the TION. Another reason why I like to teach TION, a rule is the vowel before TION is going to be long, except for when it's an I. And then when it's an I, it's short. And ish, the vowel before ish is stressed and short, regardless of the tactical string. ULE tends to be preceded by a short vowel. IT and ID tend to be preceded by a stressed short vowel. All right, so how do I teach it? All right, now that we're online teaching, I had to revamp what I'm doing, and I made a suffix introduction that actually is free on my website. If it's something that you're looking for, I'll show you what a page looks like. So when I introduce a suffix, I'm going to have the suffix in the pink, what it sounds like in green, and then what it could possibly mean if it has a meaning. So ed has 3 sounds. It has a very schwad sound, ud, id, ed, depending on what the word is and where you're from, d, and t. So I have 3 rows of words that I have the students read. I go through this with all the frequently used suffixes, I guess I would say, that it's in this little video presentation. It's actually not a video, it's a PowerPoint, so you can just click through it with your students as you're teaching it to them. All right, so that's all I've got to say for today. Thank you for viewing this tutorial. If it was helpful, share it. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. Send me a note. Tell me what's going on. If you like my videos, I love making them. So let me know, and I'll make some more. So thanks a lot, everyone.